The bullet that killed Fiona Hartley's father on her 18th birthday started the whispers that would follow her for the next 3 years across every dusty town from Missouri to California. She stood in the doorway of their modest farmhouse outside Independence, Missouri, in 1872, watching the sheriff remove his hat with that particular expression of pity and dread that meant her world was about to shatter. And somewhere in the gathering crowd of neighbors, someone muttered the word that would become her shadow: cursed. Her father had been hauling supplies into town when his wagon wheel struck a rut, startling the horses. The animal reared, the wagon overturned, and a rifle that should not have been loaded discharged straight through his chest. A freak accident, the sheriff said. Bad luck, others whispered. But when Fiona's mother took ill with fever just 2 weeks later and never recovered, the whispers grew louder. When the farm burned down 3 months after that, struck by lightning on a clear summer day, the whispers became certainty. Fiona Hartley was cursed. Unlucky. A harbinger of misfortune to anyone who came too close. She tried to stay in Independence despite it all. She took work at the general store, but the owner's wife insisted she be let go after a shelf collapsed, nearly crushing a customer. She found employment at the boarding house, but after a small kitchen fire, she was turned out onto the street with her meager belongings and stern warnings never to return. Everywhere she went, accident followed. A spooked horse here, a broken axle there, a sudden illness, a financial loss. None of it was truly her fault, but in the superstitious mind of frontier society, fault mattered less than pattern. By the spring of 1875, at 21 years old, Fiona had worn out her welcome in 4 different towns. She had become a ghost of sorts, drifting through Kansas and Nebraska with nothing but a worn carpetbag, her mother's Bible, and the clothes on her back. She learned to lie about her name, to move on before anyone could connect the dots between her arrival and whatever misfortune befell the town. She learned to keep her distance from people, to avoid forming attachments, to accept that loneliness was safer than the alternative. The stagecoach that carried her toward California in late summer of 1875 hit a rock and broke an axle just outside of Jamestown. The driver, a grizzled man named Pete who had been kind enough not to ask too many questions when she could only afford half the fare, swore colorfully as the coach lurched to a stop. The other passengers, a merchant and his wife, climbed out complaining about the delay. When they learned there was no spare axle and they would have to wait for help from town, the merchant's sharp eyes fixed on Fiona. "This you're doing?" he asked, his voice cold with suspicion. "Sir." Fiona kept her eyes downcast, her hands folded in her lap. "Jenkins in Carson City warned me about a dark-haired girl who brought bad luck everywhere she went. Said she was heading this direction." The merchant stepped closer. "You wouldn't happen to be that girl, would you, miss?" Pete the driver frowned. "Now hold on, Matheson. Axles break. Ain't nobody's fault but bad roads and worse maintenance." But the damage was done. The merchant's wife clutched her husband's arm, staring at Fiona with wide, fearful eyes. Fiona gathered her carpetbag and stepped down from the coach, her throat tight with familiar shame and anger. "I will walk the rest of the way," she said quietly. "I am sorry for the trouble." "Now, miss, you don't have to do that," Pete protested, but Fiona was already walking, her worn boots kicking up dust on the road toward the town visible in the distance. Behind her, she heard the merchant's voice carrying on the wind, spreading her story, her curse, ahead of her like a herald announcing a queen. The walk into Jamestown took an hour under the hot California sun. By the time Fiona reached the main street, her dress was dusty, her face flushed with heat, and her water canteen was empty. The town was larger than she expected, bustling with the activity of a mining community that had survived the initial gold rush and settled into something more permanent. False-fronted buildings lined the wide street, their fresh paint suggesting prosperity. Miners, merchants, cowboys, and families moved about their business with the purposeful energy of a town that believed in its future. Fiona found a bench outside the general store and sat down heavily, trying to gather the strength to face whatever came next. She needed work. She needed a place to stay. She needed to eat. But more than anything, she needed to figure out how to escape the reputation that seemed to travel faster than any stagecoach. "You look like you have had a long journey." The voice was male, deep and warm with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas or perhaps Oklahoma. Fiona looked up, shading her eyes against the sun, and found herself staring at one of the tallest men she had ever seen. He was perhaps 24 or 25, with broad shoulders stretching a faded blue shirt, dusty chaps over worn denim, and a wide-brimmed hat pushed back to reveal sun-bronzed features and eyes the color of summer sky. A bandana hung loose around his neck, and a Colt revolver rested in a well-worn holster at his hip. Every inch of him proclaimed cowboy, from his scuffed boots to the easy, confident way he stood. "I have," Fiona said carefully, not meeting his eyes directly. "Thank you for your concern, sir." "Name's Owen Barrett," he said, crouching down so he was closer to her eye level, a gesture that struck her as surprisingly considerate. "I work the Barrett Ranch about 5 miles north of town. You just arrive." "Yes." Fiona clutched her carpetbag tighter. "I was hoping to find work here." "What kind of work you looking for?" Owen's eyes were direct but not unkind, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Not because he seemed threatening, but because no one had looked at her with simple human interest in so long that she had forgotten how it felt. "Anything honest," Fiona said. "I can cook, clean, mend, handle accounts. I worked in stores and boarding houses back in Missouri." Owen nodded slowly. "Why'd you leave Missouri?" The question was inevitable, but Fiona still felt her chest tighten. She could lie. She probably should lie. But something about Owen Barrett's open, honest face made lying feel worse than usual. "Bad luck," she said finally. "People thought I brought bad luck." To her surprise, Owen did not recoil or make a sign against evil. He simply tilted his head, considering her words. "That's so." "What kind of bad luck?" "The ordinary kind that happens every day," Fiona said, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. "Accidents, illness, fires, broken equipment, the kind of thing that happens in life, but people need someone to blame. And they blamed you." "Yes." Owen was quiet for a long moment, then he straightened up, his tall frame blocking the sun and casting her in shadow. "Well, Miss Hartley, Fiona Hartley." "Well, Miss Hartley, I don't put much stock in curses and such. My mother always said that luck is just preparation meeting opportunity, and bad luck is usually just poor judgment dressed up fancy." He paused. "My ranch lost our housekeeper last month. She married a miner and moved to Sacramento. We have been making do, but the place is falling apart without a woman's touch. If you are interested, the job is yours." Fiona stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You do not even know me." "I know you have been honest with me when you could have lied," Owen said simply. "I know you are willing to work. I know you have walked a long way in the hot sun and you are still sitting up straight and speaking clear, which tells me you have backbone." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Besides, if you really are cursed, I figure I have survived cattle stampedes, flash floods, rattlesnakes, and a bullet from a claim jumper. Whatever bad luck you are carrying cannot be worse than that." Something painful and fragile unfurled in Fiona's chest. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying hope. I do not want to cause you trouble." "Then do not," Owen said, extending his hand to help her up. "Come on. We can get you settled, get some food in you, and we will talk terms. Fair wages, room and board, Sundays off. How's that sound?" Fiona looked at his hand, calloused and strong, offering help without reservation or fear. Slowly she reached out and took it, letting him pull her to her feet. His grip was firm and warm, and he did not let go immediately, his eyes searching her face with an expression she could not quite read. "It sounds too good to be true," she admitted. "Best things usually do," Owen said, "but sometimes they are true anyway." The Barrett Ranch sat in a valley between rolling golden hills, with a creek running along the eastern boundary and a view of the Sierra Nevada mountains in the distance. The house was a sturdy two-story structure built from local timber, with a wide porch and a stone chimney. Nearby stood a large barn, several outbuildings, corrals filled with horses, and pastures dotted with cattle. It was clearly a prosperous operation, well-maintained and organized. Owen drove them out in a wagon, keeping up a steady stream of conversation that required little response from Fiona. He talked about the ranch, established by his father 15 years ago, and now run by Owen and his younger brother. He talked about the cattle business, about the challenges of drought and disease, about his hopes to expand into horse breeding. He talked easily, as comfortable with words as he was with silence, and gradually Fiona felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. As they pulled up to the house, a younger man emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. He had the same tall frame as Owen but was lankier, still growing into his height, with darker hair and a more serious expression. "Oliver, this is Miss Fiona Hartley," Owen called, jumping down from the wagon. "She is going to be our new housekeeper. Miss Hartley, this is my brother Oliver. He is 21 and thinks he knows everything." "I know more than you," Oliver shot back, but there was affection in his tone. He approached Fiona with curiosity in his dark eyes. "Welcome to the ranch, Miss Hartley. Lord knows we need help. Owen burned breakfast 3 times this week." "Twice," Owen corrected. "And that last time was your fault for distracting me." Fiona found herself almost smiling at their easy banter. "Thank you. I will do my best to prevent any more burned breakfasts." Oliver's expression grew more serious. "Owen mentioned he was going to look for a housekeeper in town. I am glad he found you. This place has been falling apart without proper care." As if to prove his point, the front door hung slightly crooked on its hinges, and Fiona could see through the windows that dishes were piled in the kitchen. When Owen led her inside, she found a house that had good bones but desperately needed attention. Dust covered most surfaces, laundry was piled in corners, and the stove looked like it had not been properly cleaned in weeks. "It is not usually this bad," Owen said, sounding embarrassed. "We have been busy with a new herd and things got away from us." "It is fine," Fiona said, already mentally cataloging what needed to be done. "I have seen worse." She had in the boarding house in Kansas where she had worked for 3 days before a pipe burst and flooded the ground floor. Owen showed her to a small room on the 2nd floor, clean but sparse, with a bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the hills. "This was our mother's sewing room," he explained. "She passed 5 years ago, fever. We have kept it empty since then, but I think she would have liked knowing someone was using it again." "I am sorry for your loss," Fiona said softly. "Thank you." Owen's expression grew distant for a moment, then he cleared his throat. "Anyway, you get settled. Come down when you are ready, and we will work out the details over supper. Oliver is making stew, which means it will be edible but not particularly good." After Owen left, Fiona sat on the edge of the bed and let herself feel the full weight of exhaustion that had been building for weeks. She was scared to hope, scared to believe that this might actually work out, scared that the curse that had followed her for 3 years would manifest here and destroy this opportunity like all the others. But she was also desperately tired of running, tired of being alone, tired of the weight of superstition and blame. Maybe, she thought, just maybe, Owen Barrett was right. Maybe luck was just life happening and she could find a way to make a life here. She unpacked her few belongings, washed her face and hands in the basin, changed into her other dress which was slightly less dusty, and went downstairs to begin the next chapter of her story. The first week at the Barrett Ranch passed in a blur of work that Fiona found oddly comforting. She scrubbed and cleaned, organized and repaired, cooked and mended, throwing herself into the physical labor with an intensity born of determination. She would make herself indispensable. She would prove her worth. She would not give Owen or Oliver any reason to regret hiring her. The brothers were easy to work for, considerate without being overbearing. They ate whatever she cooked with genuine appreciation, even her first attempt at biscuits, which came out slightly burned on the bottom. They respected her privacy, never entering her room or asking intrusive questions about her past. They included her in conversation at meals without forcing her to participate. Slowly, incrementally, Fiona began to relax, but she remained vigilant, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It happened on the 8th day. Fiona was in the kitchen preparing lunch when she heard a commotion from the barn. Male voices raised in alarm, the sound of horses neighing in distress. Her heart sank. She wiped her hands on her apron and ran outside, already knowing what she would find. Owen was in the corral, trying to calm a large bay gelding that was rearing and bucking wildly. Oliver was nearby, blood streaming from a cut above his eyebrow. 2 ranch hands stood outside the fence, looking shaken. "What happened?" Fiona called, her voice tight. One of the hands, a grizzled man named Pete who had worked for the Barretts for years, turned to her with an expression that made her stomach drop. "Horse spooked for no reason. Caught Oliver with a hoof. Could have been worse." "There is always a reason," Owen said firmly, still working to calm the gelding with quiet words and steady hands. "Probably a snake in the hay or something startled him. Pete, check the barn." But Pete was still looking at Fiona, and she saw it happening in real time, the connection forming in his mind, the suspicion taking root. She had seen it so many times before. "I will get bandages," she said quietly, turning back toward the house. She tended Oliver's cut in the kitchen, her hands steady even as her heart raced. The wound was not deep, but it would leave a bruise. Oliver winced as she cleaned it but did not complain. "Thank you, Miss Hartley," he said when she finished. "You have a gentle touch." "I have had practice," Fiona said, packing away the medical supplies. "How do you feel?" "Stupid, mostly," Oliver admitted. "I should have seen him getting agitated. That is on me, not the horse." But when Owen came in an hour later, his expression was troubled. "Pete found a broken board in the barn," he said without preamble. "Old rot finally gave way, probably made a loud crack that spooked thunder, but Pete is saying." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "That it is my fault," Fiona finished for him. "That I am cursed and bringing bad luck to your ranch." Owen's jaw tightened. He mentioned something along those lines. "I told him to keep his superstitions to himself." "It will not matter," Fiona said dully. "Once one person believes it, others will follow. Things will happen, ordinary things, and they will blame me. It is how it always goes." "Then we will change how it goes," Owen said with unexpected fierceness. "This is my ranch, and I do not tolerate that kind of talk. Pete is a good worker, but he does not make the rules here." "You have done nothing wrong, Miss Hartley. Nothing." Fiona wanted to believe him, but she had heard similar reassurances before, and they always crumbled in the face of accumulating coincidence. "I should leave," she said quietly, "before something worse happens." "No." Owen's voice was sharp and he stepped closer, his blue eyes intense. "You should stay and do the job I hired you for. You are a good worker, Miss Hartley. The house has not looked this good in years. Oliver and I are eating better than we have since our mother died. You belong here." The words hit Fiona with unexpected force. "You belong here." When was the last time anyone had said something like that to her? When was the last time she had felt like she belonged anywhere? "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Owen was quiet for a long moment, his gaze searching her face. "Because you deserve kindness," he said finally. "And because I think you have not had nearly enough of it." He paused. "And maybe because I see something in you that reminds me of my mother. She used to say that the world breaks everyone eventually, and afterwards, some people are stronger in the broken places. You strike me as someone who has been broken and put yourself back together, and that is worth respecting." Tears burned in Fiona's eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. She could not afford to be weak, could not afford to hope. What if something terrible happens? What if someone gets hurt worse than Oliver? What if there is a fire or a flood, or "Then we will deal with it," Owen interrupted gently. "Life on a ranch is unpredictable, Miss Hartley. Accidents happen. Weather turns bad. Animals get sick. That is just the way of things. It does not mean you are cursed. It means you are alive and living in a world that is sometimes hard and sometimes beautiful and mostly just complicated." Fiona drew in a shaky breath. "I will stay," she said finally. "But if things get worse, if people start to believe I am causing harm, I will leave. I will not let my presence hurt you or your brother." "Deal," Owen said, extending his hand. "But I think you will find that we Barretts are tougher than we look." She shook his hand and once again felt that strange warmth spread through her at his touch. When she met his eyes, she saw something there that made her breath catch. Not pity, not fear, something else entirely, something that looked almost like admiration. Over the next several weeks, Fiona waited for disaster to strike. Instead, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. She woke early each morning to prepare breakfast, spent her days maintaining the house and cooking meals, and in the evenings, she often sat on the porch with her mending while Owen and Oliver handled ranch business. Sometimes Owen would join her, sitting on the porch railing and talking about his day, about the cattle or the horses or the weather. He never seemed to run out of things to say, and Fiona found herself slowly, cautiously opening up in response. She learned that Owen had been running the ranch since he was 19, when their father died in a riding accident. She learned that he loved the land with a fierce passion, that he dreamed of building the Barrett Ranch into something that would last generations. She learned that he had a quick wit and a kind heart, that he was respected in town and beloved by his workers, that he carried the weight of responsibility with grace even when it clearly wore on him. And she learned, much to her confusion and alarm, that she was developing feelings for him that went far beyond gratitude or professional respect. It started small. The way her heart lifted when she heard his voice. The way she found herself watching him work with the horses, admiring his strength and competence. The way his rare smile seemed to light up something inside her that had been dark for far too long. She tried to dismiss it, to remind herself that she had no business feeling anything for anyone, that attachment was dangerous and would only lead to more pain. But the heart, she was discovering, did not much care about logic. One evening in early October, Owen found her on the porch after supper, staring out at the sunset painting the hills gold and crimson. He sat down beside her, closer than usual, and was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "Can I ask you something personal, Miss Hartley?" Fiona's heart skipped. "Of course." You really believe you are cursed? The question was so direct, so sincere, that Fiona could not give him anything less than the truth. I do not know, she admitted. I want to believe it is all coincidence, that people are just superstitious and looking for patterns where none exist. But when you see the same story play out over and over, when you watch good people suffer because they showed you kindness, it becomes hard not to wonder. Have you considered that maybe those things would have happened anyway? Owen asked. That you just happened to be present, but you were not the cause. Every day, Fiona said softly, but it does not change how people see me. It does not change the fear in their eyes or the way they avoid me once the whispers start. Owen turned to face her more fully, his expression serious. I want to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. Can you do that? Fiona nodded, her throat tight. From the moment I saw you sitting outside the general store, dusty and exhausted and still holding your head high, I knew you were someone special, Owen said. Not cursed, not unlucky, special. And every day since you have been here has only confirmed that. You have brought order to chaos. You have brought warmth to a house that was becoming just a building. You have brought life back to a place that was dying by degrees. He paused, his blue eyes intense. You have brought something I did not even know I was missing. Owen, Fiona whispered, but he was not finished. I do not believe in curses, Fiona, but I am starting to believe in blessings, because that is what you are. You are my greatest blessing found, and I will fight anyone who tries to tell you different. The words hung in the air between them, trembling with meaning and possibility. Fiona felt tears spill over, running hot down her cheeks, but for the first time in 3 years they were not tears of grief or shame. They were tears of relief, of release, of something that might have been joy. I am scared, she admitted, her voice breaking. I am scared to believe you. I am scared to hope. I am scared that if I let myself care about you, something terrible will happen. Then be scared, Owen said, reaching out to gently cup her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. Be scared, but stay anyway. Be scared, but let yourself hope. Be scared, but know that whatever comes, we will face it together. You do not understand what you are asking, Fiona said, even as she leaned into his touch. Everyone who has cared for me has suffered. Everyone who has lived has suffered, Owen countered. That is not about you. That is about life. And I would rather suffer with you than be comfortable without you. And then he kissed her, gentle and careful and full of a tenderness that made Fiona's heart ache in the best way. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, anchoring herself to this moment, this man, this impossible hope. When they finally broke apart, Owen rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. Tell me I have not misread this, he said. Tell me you feel it too. I feel it, Fiona whispered. I have been trying not to, but I feel it. Then stop trying not to, Owen said, pulling back to look at her with a crooked smile. Let yourself feel it. Let yourself be happy. You deserve it, Fiona. You barely know me, Fiona protested weakly. Then let me know you better, Owen said simply. Let me court you properly. Let me show you that not everyone will run at the first sign of trouble. Let me prove that whatever you think you are carrying, you do not have to carry it alone anymore. Fiona searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt or reservation, but found only sincerity and a warmth that made her chest tight. I do not know how to do this, she admitted. I do not know how to let someone in. We will figure it out together, Owen said. One day at a time, no pressure. No expectations. Just you and me, seeing where this goes. It was the most terrifying and exhilarating thing Fiona had ever agreed to. But as she nodded and saw Owen's face light up with genuine joy, she thought that maybe, just maybe, she could learn to be brave enough for this. The next several weeks were the happiest Fiona could remember in years. Owen courted her with a combination of frontier practicality and genuine romance that charmed her despite her best efforts to remain guarded. He brought her wildflowers from the hills, taught her to ride so they could explore the ranch together, saved the best cuts of meat for her plate at dinner, and spent his evenings on the porch with her, talking about everything and nothing. Oliver watched their growing relationship with barely concealed amusement and approval. About time Owen found someone, he told Fiona one afternoon while she was helping him mend a fence. He has been married to this ranch for too long. It is good to see him smile like that. You do not think I am bringing bad luck? Fiona could not help asking. Oliver gave her a level look. Miss Hartley, in the time you have been here, we have had our best calf survival rate in 3 years. The creek has stayed full despite less rain than usual. And Owen has not gotten into a single bar fight in town, which is a record. If you are cursed, I would hate to see what blessed looks like. But the whispers had not stopped entirely. Pete still watched her with suspicion, and some of the other ranch hands gave her a wide berth. When Owen took her into Jamestown for supplies, Fiona felt eyes on her, heard conversation stop when she passed. The merchant from the broken stagecoach had spread her story, and while most people were polite to her face, she could sense their wariness. It came to a head in late October when a small fire broke out in the barn. It was quickly contained and caused minimal damage. A lantern had been left too close to dry hay, a simple accident of carelessness. But Pete immediately began spreading the word that Fiona's curse was manifesting, that the ranch was in danger as long as she remained. Owen's response was swift and uncompromising. He called all his workers together in the yard and stood with his arm around Fiona's shoulders, his expression hard. I am going to say this once, and I expect you all to listen carefully, he said, his voice carrying across the assembled men. Miss Hartley is not cursed. She is not bringing bad luck. She is a valued member of this household and someone I care about deeply. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to draw their pay and leave. I will not tolerate superstition and gossip on my ranch. The workers shifted uncomfortably. Pete opened his mouth to protest, but Owen cut him off. Pete, you have worked for my family for a long time and I respect you. But you are wrong about this. The fire was caused by carelessness, nothing more. If you cannot accept that, then we have a problem. Pete looked around at the other men, clearly hoping for support, but found none willing to risk their jobs. Finally, he nodded grudgingly. All right, boss, I hear you. Good, Owen said firmly. Now let's get back to work. As the men dispersed, Fiona turned to Owen, emotions warring in her chest. You should not have done that. You should not risk your relationship with your workers for me. I did not risk anything, Owen said. I made clear what my priorities are, and you are one of them. He cupped her face gently. You need to stop expecting me to turn on you, Fiona. I am not going anywhere. You say that now, Fiona said, her voice small. But what if something worse happens? What if someone gets seriously hurt or killed? Then it will not be because of you, Owen said firmly. It will be because life on a ranch is dangerous, and sometimes terrible things happen. But I refuse to live my life being scared of bad luck or curses, or whatever else people want to blame for the hard parts of being alive. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips, soft and sweet. You are not a curse, Fiona Hartley. You are the best thing that has happened to me in years, and I am going to keep telling you that until you believe it. November brought colder weather and preparations for winter. Fiona threw herself into preserving food, checking supplies, and ensuring the house was ready for the harsh months ahead. She found herself falling into the rhythm of ranch life, learning to read the weather by the clouds, to understand the cattle by their behavior, to anticipate what Owen and Oliver would need before they asked. She also found herself falling deeper in love with Owen Barrett. It was in the small things. The way he always made sure she had the warmest seat by the fire, the way he listened when she talked about her past without judgment, the way he looked at her like she was precious and important and real. It was in the big things, too. The way he defended her against gossip, the way he included her in decisions about the ranch, the way he talked about the future as if she would unquestionably be part of it. One cold evening in late November, as they sat together on the porch wrapped in blankets and watching the stars, Owen took her hand and said, "I love you, Fiona. I know it is fast, and I know you are still scared, but I need you to know how I feel. I love you, and I want a future with you." Fiona's breath caught. She had known this was coming, had felt it building between them like a storm gathering on the horizon, but hearing the words still sent her heart racing. "Owen." "You do not have to say it back," Owen said quickly. "I just needed you to know. I needed you to understand that this is not some passing fancy or loneliness talking. This is real. You are real to me, and I want to build a life with you." Fiona turned to face him fully, searching his beloved face in the starlight. All her life, she had been taught that she was a burden, a liability, someone to be feared and avoided. But Owen looked at her like she was a gift, like she was everything he had been waiting for. "I love you too," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I am terrified and I do not know if I deserve this, but I love you. I have loved you for weeks now, and I do not know what to do with it." Owen's face broke into the most brilliant smile she had ever seen. He pulled her close, kissing her with a passion that made her dizzy. "You do not have to do anything with it except feel it," he murmured against her lips. "Let yourself be loved, Fiona. Let yourself be happy." "What if I bring you nothing but sorrow?" Fiona whispered, voicing her deepest fear. "Then we will face the sorrow together," Owen said. "But I think you are going to bring me joy and laughter and purpose, and a reason to make this ranch into something worth passing on to our children. Our children." The words hung between them, full of promise and possibility. Fiona had not let herself imagine a future with children, with family, with permanence. But suddenly she could see it. A life built here in this valley, children running through the fields, Owen beside her as they grew old together. "I want that," she breathed. "I want it so much it scares me." "Then marry me," Owen said, his voice rough with emotion. "Marry me and make this ranch a home. Marry me and help me build something that will last. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life showing you that you are not cursed. You are blessed, and you are blessing me with every moment we have together." It was not the most eloquent proposal, but it was honest and earnest and so perfectly Owen that Fiona felt tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." Owen whooped with joy, picking her up and spinning her around until they were both dizzy and laughing. When he set her down, he kissed her again, deeper and more thoroughly, and Fiona felt something fundamental shift inside her. She was choosing hope. She was choosing love. She was choosing to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this. They were married in Jamestown's small church on a crisp December morning in 1875. It was a simple ceremony, attended by Oliver, a handful of ranch hands, and some townsfolk who were either genuinely happy for them or too polite to object. Fiona wore a simple blue dress that Owen had commissioned from the town seamstress, and Owen wore his best suit, his hair slicked back and his face shining with happiness. When the pastor asked if anyone objected to the union, there was a long, tense silence. Fiona held her breath, waiting for someone to stand up and denounce her as cursed, to warn Owen away from his terrible mistake. But no one spoke, and the moment passed. "I pronounce you man and wife," the pastor said with a smile. "You may kiss your bride." Owen did, thoroughly and enthusiastically, to scattered applause and Oliver's loud whistling. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen whispered in her ear, "See, no lightning, no earthquakes, just you and me and our future starting right now." The wedding breakfast was held at the ranch, with Oliver and some of the hands having prepared a feast. It was chaotic and warm and full of laughter, and Fiona found herself relaxing into the celebration. These people might not all believe she was innocent of her supposed curse, but they were willing to give her a chance for Owen's sake, and that was enough. That night, Owen carried her across the threshold of the house that was now truly her home. He had moved her things into the master bedroom, the room he had occupied alone for so long, and made space for her in every drawer and corner. As he set her down and began slowly, reverently removing the pins from her hair, Fiona felt the last of her walls crumble. "I am yours," she said softly. "For better or worse, for whatever comes." "And I am yours," Owen replied, cupping her face in his hands, "my wife, my blessing, my home." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a claiming and a surrender on both sides. Owen was patient and gentle, whispering words of love and reassurance, as he showed her the physical expression of the emotions they had been building for months. Fiona gave herself over to the experience, to him, feeling for the first time in years that she was exactly where she belonged. Afterwards, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Owen's hand tracing lazy patterns on her skin, Fiona felt a peace settle over her that she had thought lost forever. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Owen murmured sleepily. "For seeing me when everyone else looked away. For believing in me when I could not believe in myself. For loving me." Owen pulled her closer, kissing her temple. "You never have to thank me for that. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." Winter settled over the ranch with unusual mildness. The snows that came were light and manageable, the livestock stayed healthy, and the house was warm and full of life. Fiona thrived as Owen's wife, growing more confident in her role and her place. She still caught whispers in town sometimes, still saw suspicion in some eyes, but with Owen's steady presence beside her, it mattered less and less. In February, she realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with a complicated mix of joy and terror. She wanted this child desperately, wanted to give Owen the family he deserved, but the thought of bringing a baby into the world while carrying the weight of her supposed curse was overwhelming. What if something went wrong? What if the child suffered because of her? What if she lost this precious life the way she had lost so many other good things? She tried to hide her fear, but Owen knew her too well by now. One evening, he found her in the kitchen staring out at the darkening hills, her hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "When were you going to tell me?" he asked gently. Fiona jumped, then slumped. "I was trying to figure out how." Owen came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her and pulling her back against his chest. "Are you worried something will go wrong?" "Yes," Fiona admitted in a small voice. "I am terrified." "That is normal," Owen said. "My mother told me once that every woman who carries a child is at least a little scared. It is a big responsibility, bringing a life into the world." He turned her to face him. "But we are going to do it together, and we are going to love this child with everything we have. And whatever happens, it will not be because you are cursed. It will just be life unfolding the way it does." "What if I am a terrible mother?" Fiona whispered. "What if I cannot protect them?" "You will be a wonderful mother," Owen said with absolute certainty. "You are strong and brave and loving, and our child will be lucky to have you." He placed his hand over hers on her stomach. "This baby is already blessed, Fiona." Blessed to have you, blessed to have this ranch as their home, blessed to be part of a family that will love them fiercely. Tears spilled down Fiona's cheeks. You always know exactly what to say. That is because I mean it, Owen said, kissing her softly. Every word. Now, let's get you sitting down. You need to rest. I am barely pregnant, Fiona protested, but she let him lead her to the sitting room and settle her in the most comfortable chair with a blanket and a cup of tea. Oliver came in from his work and immediately noticed the change in atmosphere. What is going on? He asked, looking between them. You are going to be an uncle, Owen said, unable to keep the pride from his voice. Oliver's face split into a grin. Seriously, that is wonderful. He came over to give Fiona an awkward but genuine hug. Congratulations, both of you. Thank you, Oliver, Fiona said, warmed by his enthusiasm. I hope you are ready to be put to work when the baby comes. I am ready for anything, Oliver declared. Well, almost anything. I am not changing diapers. That is where I draw the line. We will see about that, Owen said with a laugh. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the spring. Fiona experienced the usual discomforts, but no serious complications. Owen was attentive to the point of being overprotective, trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work, which Fiona found both endearing and frustrating. She was pregnant, not fragile, and she refused to be treated like glass. In May, a late spring storm brought heavy rains that caused the creek to flood its banks. Several ranches in the area sustained damage, and 2 people in town were injured when a building collapsed. As Fiona had feared and expected, the whispers started again. She heard them in town when Owen took her for supplies. Barrett Ranch got lucky this time, but mark my words, that cursed woman will bring them to ruin eventually. Poor Owen does not even know what he has brought into his home. That baby is probably cursed too. Fiona tried to ignore the gossip, but it wore on her, especially in her more vulnerable pregnant state. One evening, she broke down crying in Owen's arms, unable to contain the fear and frustration any longer. They are saying our baby will be cursed, she sobbed. They are saying I am going to bring destruction to everything you have built. Maybe they are right. Maybe I should leave before I ruin everything. Stop, Owen said firmly, holding her tighter. You are not leaving. You are not going anywhere, and our baby is not cursed any more than you are. He pulled back to look at her, his expression fierce. I am tired of these small-minded fools and their superstitions. Tomorrow, I am going to town and I am going to make some things very clear. Owen, you cannot fight the whole town, Fiona protested. Watch me, Owen said grimly. The next day, Owen rode into Jamestown with determination in every line of his body. Fiona wanted to go with him, but he insisted she rest, and Oliver stayed home to keep her company and prevent her from worrying herself sick. Owen was gone for hours. When he finally returned, he looked tired but satisfied. He found Fiona in the kitchen and pulled her into a long, reassuring embrace. What did you do? She asked anxiously. I had some conversations, Owen said. Started with the pastor, then the mayor, then made my way through most of the business owners in town. Reminded them that the Barrett Ranch employs a lot of people and buys a lot of goods, and that I do not take kindly to gossip about my wife. Also pointed out that we have had one of the mildest winters and most productive springs in recent memory, and maybe instead of looking for curses, they should be counting their blessings. Owen, Fiona breathed, torn between gratitude and concern. You should not have to defend me like this. I am not defending you, Owen corrected. I am defending us, our family, our future. And I will keep doing it as many times as necessary until people either accept it or keep their mouths shut. Did it work? Fiona asked. Owen shrugged. Some people listened. Some people will never change their minds. but I made it clear that anyone who wants to do business with the Barrett Ranch needs to show my wife respect. That should at least reduce the open gossip. It did help, to some extent. The whispers became more muted, at least when Owen was around. But Fiona could still feel the weight of suspicion and fear, and she wondered if she would ever truly be free of it. Their son was born on a warm August evening in 1876, delivered by the town midwife with Owen holding Fiona's hand through every moment of pain and effort. The baby came into the world screaming lustily, healthy and strong, with a shock of dark hair in his father's blue eyes. "A boy," the midwife announced, placing the cleaned and wrapped infant in Fiona's arms. "A fine, healthy boy." Fiona looked down at her son and felt something crack open inside her chest. This tiny, perfect creature was hers. Hers and Owen's. A life they had created together. Proof that she could make something beautiful instead of bringing only destruction. "He is perfect," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Owen leaned over them both, his own eyes wet. "He is incredible. You are incredible." He kissed her forehead, then gently touched his son's tiny hand. The baby's fingers curled around his father's finger, gripping tight. "Hello, little one. I am your father, and this is your mother, and we have been waiting for you." They named him Owen Barrett, Jr., but almost immediately began calling him Junior to distinguish him from his father. The baby thrived, growing quickly and showing a robust constitution that calmed some of Fiona's fears. She devoted herself to motherhood with the same intensity she brought to everything else, determined to give her son the love and security she had been denied for so many years. Owen was a devoted father, taking to the role with natural ease. He would spend hours with Junior, talking to him, singing off key lullabies, showing him around the ranch even though the baby could not possibly understand. Oliver was equally smitten with his nephew, breaking his vow about not changing diapers within the first week. As the months passed, and Junior continued to be healthy and happy, some of the tension in town began to ease. It was hard to maintain that someone was cursed when their child was so obviously thriving. Fiona began to feel cautiously optimistic that maybe, just maybe, she had finally outrun her reputation. Then, in October, disaster struck. A group of cattle rustlers hit the ranch in the dead of night, making off with nearly 50 head of cattle and injuring 2 ranch hands in the process. It was the most significant loss the Barrett Ranch had sustained in years, and the timing could not have been worse, coming right before winter when they needed every resource. The whispers started again immediately. "Told you she was cursed. That family is doomed as long as she is there. Poor Owen, probably going to lose everything now." Owen was furious, but his anger was directed at the rustlers, not at superstitious gossip. He organized a posse and rode out with the sheriff to track down the thieves. He was gone for 4 tense days while Fiona waited at home with Junior, trying to keep busy and not imagine every terrible possibility. When Owen returned, he was exhausted and injured. A bullet had grazed his arm during a confrontation with the rustlers, but grimly triumphant. They had recovered most of the cattle and captured 3 of the 5 rustlers. The other 2 had escaped into the mountains but were unlikely to risk returning. Fiona cleaned and bandaged Owen's wound while he ate ravenously and filled her in on what had happened. "We got lucky," he admitted. "Could have been much worse, but we will be tight on money this winter." "People are saying it is my fault," Fiona said quietly. "They are saying the curse is finally showing itself." Owen's jaw tightened. "I know. I heard some of it in town. Fiona, we need to talk about this. Really talk about it." Fiona's heart sank. Here it was, finally. The moment when Owen would admit that maybe the superstitious folks had a point. "All right." Owen took her hands, his expression serious. "I do not believe you are cursed. I need you to know that first and foremost. But I also know that you are never going to believe it yourself as long as we stay here. The people in this town have made up their minds, and every accident or misfortune will be blamed on you. That is not fair and it is not right, but it is reality. What are you saying? Fiona asked, her voice trembling. I am saying that maybe we should consider starting fresh somewhere else, Owen said. Somewhere where no one knows your history. Somewhere you can just be Fiona Barrett, wife and mother and partner in building something new without the weight of old superstitions hanging over you. Fiona stared at him. You would leave your ranch, your home, everything your father built. This land and these buildings are not my home, Owen said firmly. You and Junior. Wherever we go, that is home. And if leaving this place means you can finally be free of the cursed reputation, then it is worth it. But Oliver, Fiona protested, the workers. Everything you have worked for. Oliver is 22 now, more than capable of running this place on his own, Owen said, and he has been talking about wanting more responsibility anyway. As for what I have worked for, I have you and our son. That is what matters. The rest is just property. Fiona felt tears welling up again. You would really do that for me? I would do anything for you, Owen said simply. I love you, Fiona, and I am tired of watching you carry the weight of other people's fear and ignorance. I want you to be happy. I want you to be free. If that means starting over somewhere new, then that is what we will do. For a long moment, Fiona could not speak around the lump in her throat. Finally, she managed. Where would we go? I have been thinking about that, Owen said, warming to the topic. There is land opening up in Montana, good grazing land for a new ranch. Or we could go farther west to Oregon or Washington. Fresh territory where no one knows us and we can build something from the ground up. He paused. Or, if you want to try something completely different, we could move to a city. San Francisco, maybe. I could find work, and you could be anonymous in a crowd instead of a target for gossip. Fiona considered the options, her mind racing. The idea of starting over was terrifying but also exhilarating. To be somewhere where she was not defined by tragedy and superstition. To raise Junior without the weight of whispers and suspicion. To build a life based on who they were, not what people feared they might be. Montana, she said finally. I want to stay on the land. I want Junior to grow up knowing the same kind of life you did, with space and freedom and purpose. And I want us to build something together, you and me, that is ours from the start. Owen's face lit up. Montana it is, then. We will spend the winter planning and saving, and come spring, we will head north and find our new home. True to his word, Owen spent the winter making arrangements. He discussed the plan with Oliver, who was surprised but supportive, excited about the chance to run the Barrett ranch himself. They began selling off equipment they would not need for the journey and saving every penny toward their fresh start. Owen wrote letters to contacts in Montana, gathering information about available land and opportunities. Fiona used the time to prepare as well, making clothes that would hold up to travel, preserving food for the journey, and caring for Junior, who was growing rapidly and becoming more alert and engaging every day. She also worked on letting go of the guilt and fear that had defined her for so long. If they were truly starting fresh, she needed to leave behind the person who believed she was cursed and embrace the person Owen saw when he looked at her. Strong, capable, worthy of love and happiness. It was not easy. Years of being blamed for every misfortune had left deep scars, and Fiona still woke sometimes in the night, convinced that disaster was imminent. But Owen was always there, patient and reassuring, reminding her that whatever came, they would face it together. In March of 1877, they said goodbye to the Barrett Ranch. It was harder than Fiona expected, even knowing that this place had never fully accepted her. She had been happy here, had found love here, had become a wife and mother here. This house had been the first place in years that felt like home. But as they loaded their wagon and said farewell to Oliver and the ranch hands, Fiona felt a sense of possibility rising in her chest. They were not running away. They were running toward something, toward a future free of shadows and whispers, toward a life where she could finally believe she deserved all the good things Owen kept insisting she brought into his world. The journey to Montana took 6 weeks of hard travel. They went by wagon, following established trails north through Oregon and into Montana territory. Junior handled the journey remarkably well, seeming to enjoy the constantly changing scenery and his parents' undivided attention. Owen drove the wagon with steady competence, navigating rough roads and unpredictable weather with the same calm determination he brought to everything. They passed through mining camps and small settlements, always moving forward, always looking ahead. Sometimes people would ask where they were from, and Owen would simply say California without elaborating. No one asked for more details. In the vastness of the frontier, everyone had a story, and most people were more interested in where you were going than where you had been. In late April, they reached the area near Billings, where Owen had been corresponding with a land agent. The territory was breathtaking, with rolling plains, distant mountains, and a sky so vast it seemed to swallow the horizon. They looked at several properties before finding the right one. 200 acres of good grazing land with a creek running through it, surrounded by hills that would provide shelter from winter winds. The property had a small cabin that needed work but was livable, and the price was reasonable. Owen negotiated the purchase, and by May of 1877 they were the owners of a Montana ranch with nothing but potential ahead of them. The first year was brutally hard. They had to build everything from scratch: fences, corrals, a proper barn, improvements to the cabin. Owen worked from sunrise to well past sunset, and Fiona labored beside him whenever Junior was sleeping, helping in whatever way she could. They bought a small herd of cattle with their remaining savings and prayed the animals would survive their first Montana winter. But for all the hardship, Fiona had never been happier. Here, she was just Fiona Barrett, rancher's wife. No one looked at her with suspicion or fear. No one whispered about curses when she walked by. She was free to be herself, to make friends with neighboring ranch wives, to participate in community events without wondering if her presence would cause someone to suffer. The ranch prospered. Not quickly, and not without setbacks, but steadily and surely. Their cattle thrived on the rich Montana grassland. Owen's hard work and experience paid off, and his reputation as a fair dealer and skilled rancher spread through the territory. Within 3 years, they had expanded their herd significantly and hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work. Junior grew into a bright, energetic child, fearless and curious about everything. In 1879, Fiona gave birth to a daughter they named Lily, who had her mother's dark hair and gentle disposition. 2 years later, another son arrived, Michael, who seemed determined to keep up with his older siblings from the moment he could crawl. As their family grew, so did their home. Owen added rooms to the cabin, transforming it into a proper ranch house with enough space for their expanding family. They built a barn that was the envy of their neighbors, acquired more land, and established themselves as one of the more successful operations in the area. Fiona found herself not just accepted in the community, but genuinely liked and respected. She became known for her kindness, her skill at managing a household, and her level-headed approach to problems. She helped organize a school for the ranch children in the area, served on the committee for the annual Harvest Festival, and became someone other women sought out for advice and friendship. It was everything she had never dared to dream of having. One evening in the spring of 1884, Fiona stood on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of gold and rose. Junior, now 7, was helping his father with the evening chores. Lily was playing nearby with Michael, their laughter carrying on the wind. Fiona was pregnant again, due in the summer, and felt the baby moving inside her with the now familiar flutter that filled her with joy. Owen came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different life is now," Fiona said softly. "How happy I am, how grateful. We have built something good here," Owen agreed. "I am proud of what we have accomplished." Fiona turned in his arms to face him. They were both older now, lines forming around Owen's eyes from squinting into the sun, strands of silver beginning to thread through Fiona's dark hair. But his eyes still held the same warmth they had that first day in Jamestown, and his love for her had only deepened with time. "Do you ever regret leaving California?" she asked. It was a question she had asked before, and Owen's answer was always the same, but she needed to hear it again. "Never," Owen said firmly. "That ranch was my father's dream, this one is ours, and I would choose ours every single time." "They thought I was cursed," Fiona said, thinking back to those dark years of being blamed and feared. "They whispered that I brought nothing but bad luck." "And I said you were my greatest blessing found," Owen reminded her, cupping her face gently. "I was right, Fiona. Look at what we have. 3 beautiful children with another on the way, a successful ranch, good friends and neighbors who respect us, a life full of purpose and love and possibility." He kissed her softly. "You were never cursed. You were just waiting for the right place and the right person to see your light instead of fearing your shadows." Fiona felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you, Owen Barrett. Thank you for believing in me when I could not believe in myself. Thank you for seeing past the whispers to who I really was. Thank you for giving me this life." "I love you too," Owen said, pulling her close. "And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. You are my wife, my partner, my home. And I thank God every day that I walked past that general store in Jamestown and saw a dusty, determined woman who just needed someone to give her a chance." They stood there together as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in ever-deepening shades of purple and indigo. Behind them, their children's laughter rang out, and the sounds of the ranch settling for the night provided a comforting backdrop. Fiona had spent years believing she was cursed, that she brought misfortune to everyone she touched. But standing here in Owen's arms, surrounded by the life they had built together, she finally understood the truth. She had not been cursed. She had simply been lost, wandering through darkness until Owen found her and brought her home. And in finding her home, she had become the blessing she never believed she could be. Their 4th child, a daughter they named Rose, was born in July of 1884, healthy and strong. The birth was easier than the previous ones, and Fiona recovered quickly, tending to her newborn while managing the household and helping Owen with ranch business. It was exhausting but fulfilling work, the kind that left her tired at the end of each day but deeply satisfied. As the years continued to pass, the Barrett Ranch became a fixture of the community. Junior grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, already talking about taking over the operation someday. Lily showed a talent for healing and helped the local doctor with his rounds, developing skills that would serve the community for decades. Michael was the wild one, always getting into scrapes and adventures, but with a good heart that made it impossible to stay angry with him for long. And Rose, the baby, was bright and curious, always asking questions and wanting to understand how everything worked. Fiona watched her children grow with a sense of wonder and gratitude that never faded. These lives, these beautiful people had come from her. The woman who had been called cursed and unlucky had created a family full of love and possibility. It was a testament to everything Owen had always insisted was true, that she was not defined by superstition, but by her choices and her character. In 1890, Oliver sent a letter from California. He had married a few years earlier and now had children of his own. The Barrett Ranch in Jamestown was thriving under his management, and he was happy. But he missed his brother, he wrote, and wished they could see each other more often. He included photographs of his family, and Fiona smiled at the resemblance between Oliver's children and her own. Owen penned a long response, filling Oliver in on their lives and extending an invitation to visit whenever possible. "We have built something good here," Owen wrote. "Different from what Father started, but good in its own way. I hope someday you can bring your family to see it." That visit happened the following summer, when Oliver and his family made the long journey to Montana. It was a joyful reunion, with cousins meeting for the first time and the brothers spending hours catching up on the years they had been apart. Oliver's wife, a practical woman named Sarah, hit it off immediately with Fiona, and the two families spent 2 wonderful weeks together before Oliver had to return to California. As they said goodbye, Oliver pulled Fiona aside for a private word. "I want you to know something," he said seriously. "Back in Jamestown, there are still people who remember you, but the story has changed. They talk now about how the Barrett Ranch thrived under your care, about how Owen has done so well for himself. Some of them have even admitted that maybe they were wrong about the curse." He smiled. "You changed the narrative just by living well. That takes strength." Fiona felt emotion tighten her throat. "I had help. Owen never stopped believing in me." "That is because he saw what the rest of us eventually figured out," Oliver said. "You were never the problem. Fear and superstition were. And you beat them by refusing to let them define you." After Oliver left, Fiona thought a lot about what he had said. She realized that somewhere along the way, she had stopped thinking of herself as the cursed girl from Missouri. She had become simply Fiona, wife, mother, rancher, friend. The past still existed, but it no longer had power over her present. By 1895, Owen and Fiona had been married for 20 years. Their children were mostly grown, with Junior now 20, and beginning to take over more of the ranch operations. Lily was 17 and courting a young man from a neighboring ranch. Michael was 15 and still finding his way. Rose was 11 and showing signs of inheriting her mother's organizational skills and her father's business sense. To celebrate their anniversary, Owen took Fiona on a trip to Billings, where they stayed in the nicest hotel and went to the theater and ate meals they did not have to cook themselves. It was an extravagance they rarely allowed themselves, but Owen insisted. 20 years ago, I married the bravest woman I have ever known," he said over dinner on their anniversary night. "I want to celebrate that properly." "I was not brave," Fiona protested. "I was terrified." "You were terrified and you said yes anyway," Owen corrected. "That is the definition of brave." He reached across the table to take her hand. "I meant what I said all those years ago, you know. You are my greatest blessing. Every day with you has been a gift." Fiona squeezed his hand, overwhelmed with love for this man who had seen her when she was invisible, believed in her when she could not believe in herself, and built a life with her that exceeded her wildest dreams. "You saved me," she said softly. "No," Owen said firmly. "We saved each other. I was turning into my ranch, becoming nothing but work and responsibility. You reminded me what it meant to live. You gave me a reason to build something worth passing on. You made me whole." They returned home to find that Junior had managed the ranch perfectly in their absence, proving he was ready for more responsibility. Over the next few years, Owen gradually transitioned more duties to his son, though he remained actively involved in operations. He enjoyed having more time to spend with Fiona, to watch his younger children grow, to simply enjoy the fruits of their decades of labor. In 1900, Lily married her young man, Thomas, in a beautiful ceremony at the ranch. The whole community turned out, and Fiona felt her heart swell with pride as she watched her daughter pledge her life to someone who clearly adored her. A year later, Lily gave birth to Fiona's first grandchild, a boy named Owen after his grandfather. Watching Owen hold his grandson, Fiona felt the circle complete itself in a way that was almost too perfect to believe. This man had given her everything: love, safety, family, purpose, belief in herself. And now, they were entering a new phase of life together, as grandparents and partners who had weathered every storm and come through stronger. Junior married in 1902, bringing his wife Helen to the ranch to help with operations. Michael, after a few wild years, settled down and decided to study law, moving to Helena to pursue his education. Rose, at 18, was being courted by several young men but seemed in no hurry to marry, more interested in helping her father and brother manage the business side of the ranch. As Owen and Fiona entered their 50s, their lives took on a gentler rhythm. They still worked, but not with the frantic intensity of those early years. They had proven what they set out to prove, that they could build something lasting and good. Now they could enjoy it. They took walks together in the evenings, just as they had when they were courting. They sat on the porch and watched their grandchildren play. They made plans for the future, for improvements to the ranch, for trips they wanted to take, for the legacy they would leave behind. And sometimes, on quiet nights, they would talk about those early days in California, about the whispers and the fear and the superstition that had nearly destroyed Fiona before she ever had a chance to truly live. "You think about it much?" Owen asked one evening. "About being called cursed?" "Not as much as I used to," Fiona admitted. "It feels like a story about someone else now, like that frightened girl was a different person." "She was not a different person," Owen said gently. "She was you, just at a different point in the journey. And she had the strength to keep going even when everything seemed hopeless. That is worth remembering." "I remember being saved," Fiona said. "I remember a cowboy who looked past the whispers and saw me, who said I was his greatest blessing when everyone else said I was cursed." Owen pulled her close, and Fiona rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, feeling the solid strength of his body against hers. They had grown older together, weathered challenges together, built a life together. And through it all, his belief in her had never wavered. "You know what the best part is," Fiona said softly. "I believe it now. I believe I was never cursed. I believe I am blessed. And I believe we were meant to find each other, to build this life, to create this family. All those years of suffering led me to you, and that makes it all worthwhile." "I love you, Fiona Barrett," Owen said, kissing the top of her head. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after, until the end of time." "I love you too," Fiona replied. "My cowboy, my blessing, my home." They sat together as the Montana stars emerged overhead, countless points of light in the vast darkness. And Fiona thought about how appropriate that was. She had spent so long in darkness, believing she brought misfortune wherever she went. But Owen had been her light, guiding her to this place where she could finally shine. She was not cursed. She had never been cursed. She was simply a woman who had survived hardship and found love on the other side. And that, she thought, was the greatest blessing of all. The years continued to pass in the gentle way they do when life has settled into contentment. More grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch with noise and laughter. Junior and Helen had 4 children in total, and Lily and Thomas added 3 more. Michael surprised everyone by marrying a fellow law student and settling in Helena, where he established a successful practice and had 2 children of his own. Rose eventually married a banker from Billings and divided her time between the city and the ranch, always maintaining close ties to her family. Owen and Fiona became the patriarch and matriarch of a growing clan, beloved and respected not just by their family but by the entire community. The Barrett Ranch continued to prosper under Junior's management, and by 1910, it was one of the largest and most successful operations in that part of Montana. On their 35th wedding anniversary in 1910, the family threw a huge celebration at the ranch. Children and grandchildren came from across the territory, along with friends and neighbors from decades of community involvement. There was music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. As the sun began to set, Owen stood up and called for everyone's attention. He was 61 now, his hair silver but his body still strong, his eyes still that same brilliant blue that had captivated Fiona so many years ago. "I want to say a few words," he announced, pulling Fiona up to stand beside him. 35 years ago, I met a woman in a dusty California town. She was sitting on a bench outside the general store, looking like she had walked through hell and somehow kept her dignity. I was supposed to just be passing through town on ranch business, but something made me stop and talk to her. He turned to look at Fiona, his expression tender. People in that town whispered that she was cursed. They said she brought bad luck wherever she went. They were afraid of her, avoided her, blamed her for every misfortune that befell them. Fiona felt herself tearing up, even though she knew where this was going. She had heard Owen tell this story before, but it never failed to move her. "But when I looked at this woman," Owen continued, "I did not see a curse. I saw courage. I saw strength. I saw someone who had been beaten down by life but refused to stay down. And I thought to myself, that is someone special. That is someone worth knowing." He took Fiona's hand, holding it up so everyone could see their intertwined fingers. "I asked her to work for me. Then I fell in love with her. Then I married her. And everyone said I was crazy, that I was courting disaster, that I would regret tying my fate to someone so unlucky." Owen paused, looking out at the assembled crowd. Their children, grandchildren, extended family, friends. "Well, I am here to tell you that those people were dead wrong. Fiona is not cursed. She has been the greatest blessing of my life. She gave me children who make me proud every day. She helped me build this ranch into something that will last generations. She made me a better man than I ever would have been without her. And she showed me what real love looks like. Patient, enduring, willing to fight for each other even when the whole world says you are wrong." Tears were streaming down Fiona's face now, and she saw she was not alone. Many of the women were crying, and even some of the men were blinking suspiciously. "So here is what I want everyone here to remember," Owen said, his voice strong and clear. "Do not believe the whispers. Do not let superstition and fear dictate who you love or what you build. Do not let other people's narrow-mindedness limit your possibilities. Because if I had listened to those whispers, if I had believed Fiona was cursed, I would have missed out on the greatest love story of my life." He turned to Fiona, cupping her face gently. "They whispered you were cursed and unlucky, but I said you were my greatest blessing found, and I was right. I am still right, and I will keep being right until the day I die." Then he kissed her, right there in front of everyone, a long, sweet kiss that said everything words could not. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and when they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Fiona felt a completeness that words could not adequately describe. This was her life. This family, this man, this ranch, this community. All of it built from the ashes of those dark years when she thought she would never have anything good. All of it possible because one cowboy had looked past fear and superstition to see her true self. The celebration continued late into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling. Junior stood up at one point and toasted his parents, saying they had set an example of love and partnership that he hoped to emulate in his own marriage. Lily spoke about how her mother had taught her that strength came in many forms, not just physical but emotional and spiritual. Michael, ever the lawyer, made a passionate speech about the dangers of superstition and the importance of judging people by their character rather than rumor. And Rose, the youngest, simply said, "My parents taught me that love is not just a feeling. It is a choice you make every day." They chose each other every single day for 35 years, and that is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. As the night wound down and guests began to depart, Owen and Fiona found themselves alone on the porch once more, in the same positions they had occupied countless times over the decades. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the air was warm with the promise of summer. "That was quite a speech," Fiona said, leaning against Owen. "It was all true," Owen replied, wrapping his arm around her. "Every word." "I know," Fiona said softly. "That is why it meant so much." She was quiet for a moment, then added, "Do you know what I realized tonight?" "What?" "That I have not thought of myself as cursed in years, maybe decades. Somewhere along the way I stopped carrying that weight. I stopped believing the whispers. I stopped waiting for disaster to strike." She looked up at him. "You did that. You loved me so thoroughly, so consistently, that you crowded out all the fear and doubt." "We did that," Owen corrected. "You had to choose to believe it, Fiona. You had to do the hard work of letting go of what those people said about you and embracing the truth. I just held up a mirror so you could see yourself clearly." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Then Fiona said, "I want you to know something. Even if we had lost everything, even if the ranch had failed and we had nothing but each other, it still would have been worth it. You gave me something more valuable than security or success. You gave me back my sense of self. You made me believe I was worthy of love." Owen pulled her closer, his voice rough with emotion. "You were always worthy of love. You were always enough. You were always exactly who you needed to be." "I know that now," Fiona said, "because of you." Owen and Fiona lived to see their 50th wedding anniversary in 1925. It was a quieter celebration than their 35th, as both were in their 70s now and less inclined toward large gatherings. But the family came, 3 generations strong, to honor the couple who had built the foundation for everything they enjoyed. By then, Junior was running the ranch entirely on his own, and doing it well. Lily was a grandmother herself, her healing work having evolved into training the next generation of caregivers. Michael had become a respected judge in Helena, and Rose's children were beginning to take interest in the family business, suggesting the Barrett legacy would continue well into the future. Owen's health began to fail in his late 70s. Nothing dramatic, just the slow winding down of a body that had worked hard for decades. Fiona cared for him tenderly, just as he had always cared for her, refusing to let anyone else take over the duty. "You have been looking after me for over 50 years, she told him when he protested that she was working too hard. "Let me look after you now." On a warm evening in June of 1928, Owen Barrett passed away peacefully in his sleep with Fiona holding his hand. He was 79 years old, and had lived a full, rich life surrounded by love and accomplishment. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people from across Montana, testament to the impact Owen had made during his life. Fiona stood straight and dry-eyed through the service, her children around her, accepting condolences with grace. She did not cry until later, alone in their bedroom, when she finally let herself feel the full weight of losing her partner, her love, her greatest blessing. But even in grief, Fiona was not broken. Owen had taught her too well, loved her too thoroughly, for her to fall back into the darkness she had known in her youth. She had been shaped by his love into someone strong enough to withstand even this terrible loss. She lived another 12 years, staying active in the ranch and the community, devoted to her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She never remarried, telling anyone who asked that she had already had her great love and did not need or want another. In the summer of 1940, at the age of 86, Fiona Hartley Barrett died peacefully in her sleep, exactly as her husband had. Her children found her in the morning, lying in bed with a smile on her face, as if she had been dreaming of something wonderful. They buried her beside Owen on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, with a simple headstone that read, "Fiona Hartley Barrett, 1854–1940, beloved wife, mother, grandmother never cursed, always blessed at her funeral." Junior stood up to speak about his mother. He was 73 now, his own hair silver, but his voice was strong and clear. "My mother's life was a testament to the power of love and belief," he said to the assembled crowd. "She was told she was cursed, that she brought misfortune wherever she went. But my father saw the truth, that she was strong, capable, and worthy of every good thing life had to offer. And together, they built something that has lasted and will continue to last." He looked out at his siblings, his own children, his grandchildren. "We are all here because my father chose to ignore whispers and superstition, because he chose to see my mother clearly and love her completely, because he said she was his greatest blessing found, and he never stopped believing it." Junior paused, his voice thickening with emotion. "And my mother, in turn, chose to believe him. She chose to stop running. She chose to build instead of hide. She chose to love instead of fear, and that choice made all the difference." As they lowered Fiona's casket into the ground beside her husband's, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the hillside in golden light. And if you believed in such things, you might have said it was Owen welcoming his beloved wife home, ready to continue their love story in whatever came next. But perhaps it was simply the world acknowledging that something beautiful had existed, that two lives had intertwined in a way that created ripples of goodness echoing through generations. That a woman who had been whispered about as cursed had instead become a blessing to everyone who knew her. And that a cowboy who had seen past fear to the truth had been rewarded with a love that lasted until the end of time and beyond. The Barrett Ranch continued to thrive for generations after Fiona's death, a living monument to what she and Owen had built together. The descendants who worked the land knew the story of their matriarch and patriarch, passed down with love and respect. They knew about the whispers and the curse that never was. They knew about the cowboy who believed when no one else would. They knew about the love that defied superstition and created a legacy. And they made sure to teach their own children that the measure of a person is not in what others whisper about them, but in how they choose to live their life. That curses only have power if you believe in them. And that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as challenges, waiting for someone brave enough to see their true nature. Fiona Hartley had been told she was cursed and unlucky, marked by misfortune and tragedy. But Owen Barrett had seen the truth, that she was brave, resilient, and full of potential waiting to be unlocked by love and belief. He had called her his greatest blessing found, and in doing so, he had given her something more valuable than any ranch or fortune. He had given her back herself. And she had taken that gift and built a life so full of love and purpose and joy that no one who knew her could ever again believe in curses or bad luck. She had proven, simply by living well and loving deeply, that the whispers were wrong. In the end, Fiona Hartley Barrett was not defined by what people said about her in those dark years. She was defined by what she built afterward: a family, a ranch, a community, a legacy of love that would endure long after the whispers faded into forgotten history. She had been lost, and she had been found. And in that finding, she had discovered the greatest truth of all, that she was never cursed, never unlucky, never marked for misfortune. She was simply herself, waiting for the right moment and the right person to show her what she had been all along. A blessing, a partner, a love story for the ages, and that was how the story ended, not in tragedy or disaster, but in triumph and love and a legacy that would endure as long as the Montana hills stood tall against the sky.